For Meka Whaitiri, 5 minutes.
Mr Speaker.
Meka Whaitiri, 5 minutes.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā tātou katoa. Mr Speaker, state housing has a proud history in New Zealand. It is how we make sure that every child gets at least a decent roof over their heads. No matter how hard mum and dad are struggling financially, it is how we make sure every child gets a decent start in life. Mr Speaker, it's my privilege to stand and take a call on the third reading of this important bill. I came to this House at 9 a.m. this morning and sat in the House for 4.5 hours to try and get a call on this particular bill, Mr Speaker. So I am pleased to finally get 5 minutes to talk and share my experience of the impact that this bill is going to have for the people and constituents of who I represent in this House, Ikaro Rāwhiti. And there have been some communities that have been identified in how this bill will not address their needs. Can I make it really clear for the House? There are real social and emergency housing needs throughout Ikaro Rāwhiti. There are real housing needs. A couple of suburbs were mentioned by colleagues on this side of the House, Flaxmere. But one suburb particularly I want to mention is Marae Nui. Mr Speaker, since coming into this House, I have the privilege of visiting Marae Nui often when I'm back in the Hawke's Bay, Napier. I can tell without a word of lie, Mr Speaker, that 80 to 90% of the cases I deal on a daily basis when I'm in the electorate are to do with housing issues. That is why I'm saying a bill like this, Mr Speaker, is not going to address the real social and emergency housing needs of the constituents I represent, Mr Speaker. One of the issues raised in both the passing of this bill under urgency is why are we doing this urgently? Because that hasn't been answered by the Minister when she was in the chair. What's the urgency that's prevalent in this bill that requires us to have that time? And why weren't we given the people both going to be affected by the bill the opportunity to present, Mr Speaker? They aren't here. Their voices cannot be heard, but this side of the House are bringing the very real issues that we confront as electoral MPs to the House. This bill falls short in terms of supplying or being able to give numbers of social housing that is going to replace those that have been sold off. Like I mentioned, Mr Speaker, Marae Nui is a place of many, many social and state houses that have recently been sold or are currently vacant. We have just under 100 on the waiting list in Hawke's Bay, and yet we have these homes that are either vacant or be turned down. Mr Speaker, so much has the government dropped the ball Marae Nui that recently I met with the committee, the Marae Nui Revitalisation Committee. And who is heading that committee, Mr Speaker? The Napier City Council. The Napier City Council, along with all the government agencies, property developers, TPK, have got around the table. And when my colleague and I, Stuart Nash, visited them 2 weeks ago, we asked the question, why are you doing what you're doing? There must be a government plan to deal with housing issues in Marae Nui. Mr Speaker, you know what they told us both? There is no plan. They both said to us, the people that were around the table said there is no housing plan for Marae Nui. There is clearly a gap in that part of my electorate, Mr Speaker. There is no housing plan, and so the people of Napier have taken the ball to address the real issues. But Mr Speaker, for the time I've got left on my feet in bringing those issues of the people of Marae Nui, I also want to mention about what this bill is actually doing. As a former public servant, Mr Speaker, I understand what important and really robust policy looks like, and I also know what robust and good policy doesn't look like. And in this particular bill, they talk about removing Housing Corporation, the deliverer of housing in this country, to give advice to the Minister. Now, I read that and I fear for all the public servants in here that we are talking about Housing New Zealand. That means who's next on the block? Whose other department and the officials that work tirelessly on behalf of our community are also going to get the chop? Mr Speaker, this is one of the failings with this bill. It is not just about not delivering, but it's also downplaying the public service as a proud record in this country, and therefore I cannot support this bill. Kia ora tātou.